A few hours ago, the FDA rejected MDMA therapy as a treatment for PTSD.
MDMA is bad for you. Ivermectin is bad for you. If you are a pharmaceutical giant looking to exploit populations for endless profit, because there's some evidence to suggest that ivermectin might be effective in the treatment of cancers and that MDMA could be an effective treatment for PTSD. Is it true then that the pharmaceutical industry, and the key word here is industry, are more interested in profit than healing people? Is such a thing possible? Is it possible that the pharmaceutical industry requires medications that can be endlessly prescribed rather than medicines that effectively heal people? Is it possible that clinical trials are never undertaken unless it's likely that there's a profit at the end of them? Is it possible that we have to accept the idea that corporations make all of their decisions on the basis of profit, and that something like that is not the fault of any individual, but a systemic thinking that requires radical address? And is it possible too that only collectively, through exploring and expressing our individual freedom, our communal duty, and deep-held spiritual truths, will we be able to oppose something as monumental and mendacious as a pharmaceutical industry gone awry? Let's have a look at this story about MDMA versus PTSD and the very fact that the FDA, wow, this is a lot of acronyms, will not allow those treatments to be permitted, presumably because they really want to help us. Is that the reason they do things? Yeah, that's right. I remember now. Reality, the pandemic, everything, my childhood. The whole thing's pointing to all of these globalist interests being on our side.
A few hours ago, the FDA rejected MDMA therapy as a treatment for PTSD. It's a setback for the growing movement to use psychedelics for treatment of mental health conditions. It comes as the agency was under intense pressure from politicians and veterans to approve the drug. Last week, 80 members of Congress sent a letter to President Biden underscoring the grave need for new treatments to address PTSD in veterans. But back in June, the FDA's own advisory committee said there wasn't enough evidence the therapy was safe or effective.
We like the phrase safe and effective, and there's not enough evidence that these medicines are either safe or effective. And safe and effective, that's what runs the world these days.
NBC News medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal joins me now. So, Dr. Syal, break down why the FDA shot down this treatment.
Well, because it wasn't profitable and they prefer medicines that can be endlessly prescribed. Thank you for joining us, Doctor. That's been very, very helpful.
So the short answer here is that they want more data. And so just to expand on that a little bit, when we're approving new drugs in this country, whether it's COVID vaccines or new medications, you want to prove, in a randomized controlled trial that these things work. And Valerie, what that means is, you give a placebo to some people and you give the drug to the other people, and nobody really knows which one they're getting. But the problem, Valerie, with MDMA and with psychedelics in general is that you can't really blind that, right? So if I give a patient aspirin, they may not know which, they're getting an aspirin or a placebo, but if you're getting a psychedelic, you know if you're getting a psychedelic, and that can kind of confound the results. And so that's one of the big concerns the FDA has here tonight, Valerie, is that, the data may not be as robust as they would like, and they're asking the company to sort of go back to the drawing board and do a little bit more research.
And what were some of the other big concerns the agency originally had?
So when you're talking about MDMA, there are some risks associated with it, including, with this as well as with psilocybin. And the big thing to really watch for here is heart problems, including a really fast heart rate, really high blood pressure, as well as any potentials for abuse. And you can see, Valerie, here, they're kind of balancing the two here, right? Those safety risks on the right side compared with things that might be used for, including anxiety, depression, substance abuse, like alcohol use disorder, and potentially eating disorders. So, whenever you're deciding whether or not to approve things, you have to weigh the risks and benefits. And tonight, Valerie, the FDA is saying there's just not enough evidence to recommend it for PTSD.
I want to see what Callie Means says. Callie Means has been so brilliant on the subject of big pharma and excellent on the subject of big food. These two industries appear to operate in a kind of lockstep, ensuring that we remain on a conveyor belt of ill health, becoming steadily more obese and diabetic and in need of pharmaceutical intervention, and down they swoop, the other vampiric cohort, to fill us full of various therapies that may or may not be beneficial to us, but are certainly beneficial to them. Let's see what he's saying. The FDA just kneecapped approval of MDMA. This is the highest efficacy, lowest side effect intervention for depression and PTSD ever studied. Help those suffering get to the root cause of trauma, but it's not a recurring treatment. Against pharma business model. Outrageous. But surely they wouldn't be as audacious and as mendacious and downright malfeasant to deploy such techniques against cancer. Cancer which curiously appears to be on the rise among young people. Cancer which curiously appears to have metastasized itself into a new turbo version sometime around 2020, 2021. Did anything apocal happen around that time? Let me know in the comments and the chat. Be careful what you post. It's becoming a very censorial, invasive and authoritarian world. Here is Kathleen Ruddy, a cancer surgeon, talking about how ivermectin might have potential as an anti-cancer agent. Who among us has not been affected by cancer directly? How many people can you list that have had cancer? Please God, cancer survivors, but likely to people who have lost their lives. Is it possible, plausible, likely even, that there is an oncological industry that acts like every other aspect of the pharmaceutical industry and puts profits ahead of health? Surely not.
I'll have to say that I was as astonished as anyone might be that ivermectin has potential as an anti-cancer agent. I'm a cancer surgeon.
You may be a cancer surgeon, but I'm a vet, and I know a horse pace when I see one, and I'm looking at one when I see the words ivermectin. Is that one word or two? Sorry? Well, it's a horse pace. That's 2 words. The war against free speech is in full swing. We are the vanguard, bravely fighting back. Rumble's the home of this channel, Stay Free, and a leader in defending the fundamental human right of free speech. They've joined X to sue a cartel of advertisers and ad agencies who conspire to block ad revenue from going to the platforms. Recently, they've launched Rumble Premium. This, I think, is going to be a game changer for all of us. It's an ad-free viewing experience with great perks for viewers and creators. Rumble Premium will give you the ability to dive into your favorite content on your mobile or desktop or smart TV and savor every uninterrupted second of my content. Why don't you upgrade to Rumble Premium today? Support my free speech and the free speech of other content creators on this platform. Please go to Rumble now, rumble.com/premium. And if you use the code BRAND, you'll save $10 and Rumble will be aware that our stream is creating great converts. So that's rumble.com/premium and do use the code BRAND to save $10. Anyway, there's a link there at the bottom of the screen now. We're posting it in the chat. Join up.
We don't do parasites, okay? We don't do ivermectin. And I was not really even familiar with those people who use ivermectin. And so when, in the early days of COVID, when it became clear that ivermectin was effective in preventing and treating patients with a SARS-CoV-2 infection, I began to be aware, having looked in the literature, that there was 20 years of research showing that ivermectin had great potential in the treatment of cancer. I was introduced to a patient with stage 4 prostate cancer. Had received 2 vaccines, perfectly healthy, marathoner, no history of cancer in the family. 2 months after his second Pfizer shot, he works for the government. He's going to lose his job and his pension if he wasn't vaccinated. He was diagnosed all at once with stage 4 prostate cancer. He tells a very compelling story, melodramatic story about that 24-hour period of time in his life. And he went through the traditional protocols: radiation, chemotherapy, pharmacologic castration, all of it, over a period of 9 months. And then his doctor said, there's really nothing else we can do. And his name is Paul Mann, and he was like, can't you give me more radiation? No. Can't you give me more chemo? No. Aren't there any other drugs? No. Are there any clinical trials? There's nothing. Hospice. Send for the priest. So a friend of his knew me, and she said, would you give Paul a call? He just needs some moral support, something. So I said, sure. So I began calling him. We spoke about once a week for 3 weeks, and finally, the poor guy was suffering. He had cancer in 11 bones in his body. His right leg was completely swollen, obstructed with tumor. He's miserable. And I said, Paul, I don't know if this is going to help you, but I know it's not going to hurt you. I just can't imagine, based on my judgment and understanding of the scientific literature and all of the work that Drs. Corey and Merrick had done, and others around the world, that ivermectin would hurt you. It might help. I can't say. So he said, I'll give it a try. And he drove to Tennessee where you could get it without a prescription. P.S. I discovered last night, having dinner with Paul and his wife, Terry, he drove from where he lives in Missouri to Tennessee and paid cash for his ivermectin. That's it. He didn't submit it to an insurance company. He didn't tell anybody back in Missouri, his oncologist. No. His ivermectin prescriptions are listed in his chart. How did that information get from the pharmacy in Tennessee to his chart in Missouri? We don't know. Somebody does. I'd like to know myself. Anyway, he starts taking ivermectin, and he doesn't have any problems with it. And I talk to him every week. And how are you feeling? Well, no change. Next week, maybe a little bit better. I don't know. How's your leg? It's not quite as swollen. How's the pain? Pain everywhere. Maybe a little bit better. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Not getting worse. Not necessarily getting better, not getting worse. Fast forward. 2-month follow-up appointment at the clinic. They didn't expect to see him. Okay, he's like, Paul. He's feeling a little bit better. They do a PSA, which was off the charts to begin with. And if I'm not mistaken, at the time they randomized him to hospice, I think it was in the hundreds, maybe 700, 800.
What does that mean exactly for the layperson?
Over 4 would be abnormal. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Prostate cells normally secrete a protein, prostate-specific antigen. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that they do. Cancer cells that originate in the prostate that are dividing rapidly and growing fast are spitting out PSA, okay? It's not that they're contributing to the body economy in any way. It's just they just want to multiply and divide, and that's the end of the story. And so your PSA levels start to rise, which is a marker, a screening marker. Oh, your PSA was 4, and now it's 8. Let's do a prostate ultrasound, whatever. So PSA can be a screen for the emergence of a tumor, but it can also be used, particularly at high levels, as evidence for cancer, response to cancer, recurrence of cancer. His was, it's supposed to be, 4, it's hundreds. Okay, he goes back for his 2-month appointment. It's 1.3. They said, you're in remission. Well, not, complete remission. He still had the bone mets, but you're in like a biochemical remission. Well, that was good news. Slowly, 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 he begins to improve. Less pain, swelling is okay. A lot of other vaccine injuries, however, he's getting better. He's getting better. We're giving him nutritional support and other supplements. So he's getting better. About 9 months later, he's out dancing for 4 hours, 3 nights a week. He gets a head-to-toe rescanning, and 3 of the bone mets are gone. There's no growth of the mets that are there, no new lesions. There's only one hot spot, and that's where he received radiation therapy, and the radiologist really could not distinguish whether that was a tumor hot spot or radiation change. He is doing very well. The vaccine injury is a problem, but the cancer is no longer a problem, except for the fact that it's still there, and we want to get rid of it completely. And he said, he called me from a hockey game, and he said, if I didn't know I have cancer, I would not know I have cancer.
Kathleen Ruddy is out of control. Look at her, spreading misinformation and curing cancer. This is the kind of person that needs to be stamped out and shut down. Surely we're not beginning to believe that the pharmaceutical industry benefits from people being sick in order that they have people to treat. Why? That would be crazy, insane almost. Surely we don't imagine for a moment that during the pandemic period, the use of ivermectin was banned, and even the discussion of it was censored because it was a cheap and effective way to treat a disease that otherwise might have caused profits to have been generated through new mRNA vaccines. No. Don't become cynical. Keep your heart open and your mind closed. And your heart might be strongly affected by some of the alternatives to ivermectin, is one of the deeper ironies of this situation. So whether it's MDMA or ivermectin. It seems that the pharmaceutical industry have an interest in repressing, suppressing, and distracting us from effective therapies in order to perpetuate measures that might even make us sicker. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? Remember, give us a like and subscribe wherever you're watching this so you can support our ongoing work. Our new The Oracle series, our first ever group interviews designed to bring the greatest and most authoritative voices in particular subjects together for the very first time. Robert Malone, Dr. Pierre Corey, and Steve Kirsch.
What we've experienced is a globally deployed psychological bioterrorism playbook. It's well developed.
And then I started to see just global propaganda directed at essentially distorting, dismissing, and suppressing the evidence of efficacy. And I saw it as a crime.
And at that point, I knew that this was not just a coincidence. There were too many black swans over too short a period. I've never heard anything like this story in my life.
They seem to get the human psyche so well when it comes to brainwashing us and propagandizing us to the direction that they want us to go in, that you would think that they would know that pulling all of these various tactics would actually just push support towards Trump, not away from him.
Ryan Ruth, some of his posts even show that he appeared to have been working with, in his own words, the U.S. Embassy in Kiev. He's doing effectively military intelligence, human trafficking of terrorists.
It's in this context that I think Ruth was kind of radicalized. He decided that while he wanted to assassinate Putin, the easier thing would be to assassinate Donald Trump.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.